Hi everyone, this is Gary Summers and the audio edition of Mind, Body, Soul. One of the reasons I do these podcasts, is to put people in touch with local entrepreneurs, local holistic wellness experts, to give them an idea of the vast array of knowledge that we have surrounding us, and many people don't even know that these people exist.
Every now and then, you'll come across a special person who just wants to tell his story and with really nothing to gain out of this except to maybe help some people along the way. So my next guest is a 45-year-old firefighter with the St. John's Regional Fire Department for the last 18 years. The father of a 7-year-old daughter and 5-year-old son. Mike is an avid weightlifter and has spent 15 years running the Newfoundland and Labrador Amateur Bodybuilding Association before stepping down as president in 2018. Much of his life is dedicated to fitness, eating healthy, and overall health in general. An avid snowboarder, and spent many years traveling as a scuba instructor. Loves to play guitar and spend time with his many animals, including a Newfoundland dog, cat, goats, and chickens. Welcome, Mike Newhook.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
I met Mike at Good Life Fitness a while ago. He introduced himself to me and talked about wanting to come on this show to share his message. Mike, you're not here to talk about the upside of life, but to share with our listeners the dark side. So just give our listeners an idea of what they can expect to hear from you today.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize. I'm fighting a bit of a flu here right now, so I do sound a little raspy. I apologize for that. What I want to get across to people today is some of the struggles that I have gone through personally, but most notably addictions is what has really hit me and my family the hardest, and has been one of my biggest struggles over the last number of years. I've been in recovery now and drug-free since October 13th, 2015, so going on
Good
4 years. Thank you very much. It was a long road, but once I finally got my footing, I really dug my heels in, and I made the conscious effort that I really need to make some serious changes. And so here we are. I'm ready to tell some of my story right now.
And you said to me that when you make up your mind to do something, you're I don't know if stubborn was the word you used, but you're pretty dedicated, and you know now that you're done with this past life. You said you're drug free for the rest of your life.
I like to think so. Yeah, like I said, I did use the word stubborn earlier, and if you talk to my exes and my parents and so on, I think they'll probably you won't get a disagreement from them. But that's one of the traits that has been a thorn in my side for many issues. But for something like this, it's actually worked to my advantage. I know that once I set my mind to something, that I'm a finisher. I don't go back on my word. My word is gold. And like I said, once I've had the right support systems in place to make my recovery happen, and I was willing to do it. That's the next thing is that you have to be ready, willing, and able to accept the services that are being offered to you and be humble about it. And I don't ever see myself ever going back.
So we're not going to say you're stubborn. We're going to say you're focused.
Focus. That's a great word.
So, Mike, before you tell us your story about your addiction and how you overcame it, just explain to everybody what made you decide to become a firefighter.
Well, firefighting for me, as Gary said, it's been 18 years now, 2001, just starting into my 19th year now. I'm not there's many reasons why people become firefighters. Some of them have childhood dreams and that they always want to grow up to be a police officer or a firefighter. I never really had that. In my 20s, I was a scuba instructor, and I traveled a fair amount.
In the Cayman Islands.
I started. I started diving in here, and then I moved to Vancouver, and I was teaching scuba diving out there. And then after a few years of that, I got tired of the cold water, so I migrated down south. Lived in the Cayman Islands for 5 years, and was teaching down there. Down there is kind of where I developed an addiction to cocaine, actually. Along with alcohol, which, again, we can get into that a little bit later. And in just after the millennium in 2000, I came home. I was heavily addicted to cocaine at this time, and I came home. I just needed a break. I came home in January, and I ran into a high school buddy of mine down at the local bar here, Grapevine, and he told me that he was in the middle of doing his work term at the St. John's Regional Fire Department. And I said, that sounds intriguing. Tell me more. So he told me that the Marine Institute offered this course and told me all about the program. Well, within 2 days, I was enrolled in the course, and there was about a 2-year wait list according to the numbers of enrollment that they would take in at each time. So I said, well, I'll go back down to the Caymans. I'll spend the next 2 years sitting on this wait list, and when my number comes up, I'll come home, and then I'll start the program. 2 weeks after I went back down, I got a call saying that we've got an opening in a couple of days. And I said, well, I can't really start in 2 days. I'm living in a different country. I've got a job and vehicles, so I thought that if this happens once now, it's bound to happen again in the next 2 years. So I decided to pack things up, and this was in February now. So by June, I was living back in St. John's, and September 1st, I was in the program.
Was this during, while you were on cocaine?
Yeah, this was kind of, I was still using cocaine at the time, but what the move kind of helped me transition. I kind of got myself, the main environment for me was bartending and the nightlife, which was which kept a real stronghold on my addiction for me. So I was constantly behind the bar. The owner of the bar was a really close friend of mine. I mean, we would regularly do drugs together. So I mean, it's not like I even had to hide it from the boss. We would buy drugs together, do drugs together. So yeah, when I came home, that was kind of my opportunity to try to get clean. Now, I didn't really do anything other than abstinence for the most part. Like, I never got into any program. I just got away from that environment.
I guess that could have been an issue for you at the time, Mike, because cocaine is detectable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If there is drug testing. Now, at the time, there was no drug testing for the fire department for that, and I don't know if I know the police and that is. I can't actually, to be honest with you, I can't even really speak on that right now of what the policies are for entrance into any jobs or departments or anything like that.
Mike, some highlights of your career. I'm sure there are a lot of upsides as a firefighter. I'm sure there are a lot of downsides. Let's talk about some of the upsides. What are some of the things that you remember?
Well, this is kind of it's hard to point out highlights because every time the toner goes off and we roll out the door, most of the times we're going to somebody else's misfortune. So it's hard to say that there's a highlight that that we went to this.
Sure, it's probably not. It's not a really good word to use.
No.
Some of your experiences.
So like just say if we have a row housing on fire downtown, and we managed to cut it off, and we saved 2 houses while one is destroyed. Well, that's great that we saved 2 houses, but there's still a family that's without a house.
Yeah.
So there's lots of wins in that respect that you went there and you did your job, because that is our job to do. Other things like, recovering bodies and stuff like that have gone in the water or fallen off cliffs and stuff. Not highlights necessarily, but you do help the families bring closure. So those are, again, not to call them highlights, but things that are part of the job that, are useful aspects of the job.
Do you use scuba diving now? Are you called to do anything like that?
No, the department doesn't actually have a scuba team. That's the RNC and the RCMP and Coast Guard that do those calls.
Okay.
But like actual highlights that I do have, the relationships that I've built within members of the department. I mean, I've built some really great friendships over the years. There's lots of camaraderie. And I think that's one of the things that people don't get to experience when you go to an office job or even police for that matter, that they drive around their cruiser all day. They don't have that camaraderie that we would have in the fire hall. So we build these really strong relationships, and that the guy sitting next to you at the dinner table or sleeping across from you in the dorm, he's got your back when we get a call at 3:00 in the morning.
When you're going into that fire, he's got to be behind you.
And I know that these guys on my crew are the strongest ones there, and I've got no doubt that I'm in safe hands, and I know that they're in safe hands.
Right. Yeah.
Mike, do you want to talk about the dark side? Some of the things that probably the general public don't really get to see or understand?
I think, from the outside looking in, the general public thinks you look at a firefighter as it's a very, it's an admirable job, and kids look up to it and stuff. But one of the things that no matter how much schooling you do or how many videos you watch, nothing will ever prepare you for doing chest compressions, the amount of times that we have to do this on like teenagers, mid-20s that are overdosing in front of their parents, dying in front of their parents, or having to cut down hanging victims, or extricating bodies that have been, in car crashes, or burnt bodies from buildings and that. So, yeah, these things that's the dark side. That, I mean, once you have this, you get the visual, and you get those smells, and you hear the parents and the family members just screaming at you to bring my baby back, and these are things that you can't ever prepare for, and it's also things that will never leave you,
Mike, what's the biggest lesson your career has taught you?
I think the career, but also in response to my own recovery from my drugs and alcohol, is empathy and compassion for others. And what I mean by that is, because I have gone through really tough times, I have been off work, I have been to a rehab facility, I've been taken off work, I've been in a bad motorcycle accident, a bad car accident because of poor choices. When we respond to calls that are alcohol or drug related, I think I'm a much more compassionate and empathetic individual than I would be had I not gone through
Right, because you were there.
those dark times.
You could have been one of those people.
I was one of those people when I had my motorcycle accident. My own crew came and picked me off the road in the middle of 4 o'clock in the morning off Logie Bay Road, and I wasn't breathing. I was one of those guys. So for me to respond and being able to talk to somebody that's overdosing or having a bad trip or whatever it might be, that I can put myself in their shoes a lot better. And oftentimes I've been able to de-escalate a situation because, of course, when you're dealing with people that have addictions like that, oftentimes when police or ambulance come in particular police, a lot of people don't have that same respect when, they think the police are going to take them away. So I've actually had to instances where I've asked the police officers to leave, and I said, I can bring this man out. Just give me a couple of minutes. So, and I think because of what I have gone through,
Sure.
It's enabled me to be a better person and to be a better firefighter.
Mike, it's well known that firefighters and other uniformed services are prone to having high divorce rates, PTSD, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, drug problems. Have you been affected, or I shouldn't say have you, how have you been affected directly by any of these issues? Like, how has it affected your life, your job, your health, your family? Just go into that side of it for our listeners, would you?
Yeah, sure. Well, how it's affected my life, of course, it's cost me a couple of marriages, if you look at the negative aspect of it. It's done some damage to my family relationships, which have since I've recovered from and healed. My job, it never really affected my job performance. I did use more sick days, and actually, in fact, my job, the fire department, was very accommodating. Once I came forward that I did have an issue, my union was very instrumental in making sure that I did get the help.
Well, we're all human, right?
Right.
Really?
Yeah. So my union was very strong. The job in general and the city was very proactive in getting me a lot of help there. My health, of course, through all of this, I mean, I was continued to, go to the gym and that, but, obviously there's some health issues that are going to come along with cocaine use, drug use, and alcohol use and everything. So let's see, my recovery, what I did for recovery here is, of course, I tried many different avenues there. I tried to go to AA, and I never really bought into that. And it's not that I don't think it didn't work. It's just that I wasn't ready at the time.
Sure.
And I don't think any of these solutions they're all good solutions if the individual is ready to take
Sure.
them on, and which I wasn't at the time. I was going to appease my relationship partner at the time. But after I had my accident and, a couple of really bad things happened, I decided that I think now's the time. So I actually spent 2 months up in Bellwood Health Services up in Ontario, and I did 60 days in a treatment facility up there. So that was my biggest road to recovery right there.
Mike, can you get a little bit more into your road to recovery?
I guess when I really started to spiral, first of all, I can lead up to that before I get into the recovery there, was in August of 2015. I took some stress leave. On my last day of work, we had 3 deaths on that particular shift. And then when I came home, I was like, geez, finally, the shift is over. I pull up into my driveway and I looked across the street and my neighbor was dead in his driveway. So I knew I just needed a break. And right at this time, my relationship was failing. I was doing drugs regularly on a daily basis, using a lot of alcohol. And I knew at around that point that I had a real issue. I said, if I drive down to the end of the road here, and if I turn left, I'm going to be good. But if I turn right and I head down to the store, there's a liquor store there. If I make that right turn, I know I've got a problem. And I sat there for about 5 minutes, and I pondered it, and finally it got the better of me, and I made that right turn. And then I chugged down that flask, and I realized I got a real issue here. After that, things, again, like I said, I was off work then, off on stress leave. Things started to spiral. Relationship was going out of control. She had moved out. She had taken the kids. And at that point, I really had no accountability to anybody, to work, to a relationship or anything. So then I really went on a downward spiral, using every day, a lot every day, to a point of an attempted suicide. And then a follow-up after that, about 5 or 6 days later, I had a motorcycle accident that put me in a coma for a little bit. And that's the accident I was referring to when my own crew found me. Spent a couple of weeks in the hospital, and even when I got out of hospital, there was a 4-day span where I was out of the health sciences and that I had to go to Ontario. And I was pretty much under lock and key with my parents. And do you know, under the 4 days, the addictions were so bad that I wasn't allowed out to go out with anybody, but I managed to get 2 grams of cocaine and a flask of vodka delivered to their house, their back door, for 3 of those 4 nights in a row. Again, you're just thinking, okay, one last kick at the cat. You can't rationalize it. If you look back on it now, of course, it makes 0 sense why you would do that. But it's like, well, I'm going to treatment tomorrow. Everything is going to get better. So why not use right now? So again, there's no proper rationalization as to why did you do that. That's just not how an addict's brain works. You know. So I did spend the following day on the 13th. I flew up to October 13th. I did fly up to Ontario. Spent 60 days in a treatment facility, and I did exceptionally well. Actually, in fact, one of the things that I did do that they didn't have up there, they didn't have a Cocaine Anonymous program. So I went to lots of Alcoholics Anonymous programs, and we did lots of counseling online, one-on-one stuff, and meditations, and that sort of thing. And so I actually started a CA meeting, and I leaded that up every Friday evening. So, and became a peer counselor while I was up there. So I knew at that point I was ready to embrace the change, embrace the help, and do well with it.
Mike, great conversation. We talk now about the dark side of it, and now that you've come out on the other end, 4 years drug-free, and kudos to you for that. And I know you've got some incredible messages, certainly for people who may be in the throes of addiction right now, who maybe feel that, life is over, it's hopeless, they're not going to get any better. And I see Mike in the gym at Good Life all the time, and I see you working hard and doing great, but you still struggle.
Yeah, absolutely, no question.
But you've got some coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So do you want to just talk about that and how you deal with that on a daily basis?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I'm human. I do struggle with, a possible PTSD. Although I haven't been diagnosed, but again, I think it's naive to think that a lot of us don't have this. Anxiety, definitely. Depression. I've been on and off medications now. But for me, my coping mechanism, what I use, and there's 3 different ways that there's 3 different coping mechanisms that you can use. One of them is distraction. And what I use is Exercise. For me, exercise has been the most fundamental piece in my health. When I first started training, and that was 30 years ago, it was all about the vanity, the look, and everything like that. But now, 30 years later, at almost 46 years of age, I go to the gym for 90% is for mental health. I mean, I still feel great. I look great. Or, I think I look pretty good for my age, I guess. But it's for mental health. It's why I go. So there's other outlets that you can use. For distraction, you can read a book, you can play music, listen to music, meditation, those sorts of things. And distraction is good. Another option that you can try to use, you can feed your possibly distracted with feeding different foods. Of course, healthy choices are your best alternative there. Of course, we don't want to change one addiction for another with high fats or high sugary foods. And the third one is basically just to sit with your addiction. Your addictions will come in waves, and they usually last for 10 to 20 minutes. And this is a technique that I don't recommend for beginners because it is quite challenging, but just basically ride it out. So the first and foremost and the most important one, the one that I use all the time is exercise. I stay fit, I stay active. I go running with a crew from work all the time. I'm at the gym all the time. I hike with my animals.
Mike, can you just talk about the distractions and how powerful your mind can be and how focused you become?
Yeah, well, like I said, your mind can definitely play tricks on you there when it comes to as we know in a lot of things with addictions, there's what's called, many people don't know this, is that your addictions your brain is made up of like your lizard brain or your primal brain, and then on top of that you've got your limbic system. So, and inside your lizard brain there lies instincts such as fight or flight, reproduction, breathing, eating.
Basic survival.
Basic survival skills. And addiction is actually lodged right down in your lizard brain. And it takes these pleasure pathways up to your limbic system. So a lot of people, again, like I said, a lot of people don't understand the concept that it's just, well, why don't you just stop?
Yeah.
It's not that easy to stop. It's like just saying, just stop breathing.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. It's ingrained really deep in your brain. So it isn't that easy. So yeah, your brain can be a dangerous weapon if used improperly, right?
And Mike, even though you find exercise great, there are still some days that you struggle. That's a normal part of the recovery process, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's many days and that I go to the gym that I'm grumbling, I'm packing my gym bag, and I just don't want to go. But I know that when I get there and I do my exercise, that I'm going to leave feeling 100 times better than when I walked into the gym.
So he looks past it, right? He looks past not focusing on what you're doing, but focusing on the effect that it's going to have, the end result, which is so important. Mike, I know there are people listening, maybe in the throes of addiction. What could you say to some listeners or even family members who may be dealing with a son or a daughter or a family member who's in the throes of addiction? What could you say to people about quitting?
Quitting isn't easy. And there's many different avenues that you can take, but when we talk all the time in addiction about individual recovery, and it's right to talk about that, but we need to talk much more about the social recovery aspect of it as well. Having deeper connections with addicts in recovery, saying, I love you whether you're using or not. If you need me, I'll come and sit with you because I love you and I don't want you to be alone or feel alone. Right. So the core of the message is that I love you. You're not alone. Has to be on every level of how we respond to addicts, socially, politically, individually. So the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. So let's look to our friends and our family for those connections, and don't treat people that are users as outcasts. Embrace them. They're still human underneath.
And I certainly, the road to recovery can be a long one, so certainly surrounding yourself with people who have patience, who look not to what you're doing today, but how they can help you on that road to
Absolutely.
recovery.
And, not everybody's going to get it. And, most people don't get it. But as long as you have one person in your corner that believes in you and stands by your side, sometimes that one person is all you need to make it through.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for recovery, you do need somebody, that has patience. And, it's a tough battle. It really is. And when it comes to, it's like, well, why don't you just go to AA? Why don't you just do this? It's like, if you're not ready to do these things, you literally have to take people by the hand and walk them to meetings and stuff. They might be willing to go, but they'll always give you lip service and say, yeah, I'll go tomorrow, or I'll go on Tuesday. But if from a family member, it's just saying, hey, there's a meeting at the Muse Center now tonight at 7 p.m. Why don't I come pick you up and I'll grab you a coffee and we'll head on down. That's how you approach somebody that's struggling with addictions.
And of course, too, taking yourself out of the situation where you won't be exposed. I mean, if you got some buddies who are in the throes of addiction and you're going to put yourself right back in that situation, that can be very tough as well.
Absolutely. The one thing, day one of when I was in treatment up in Bellwood, was they said, take your cell phones out and delete all of your dealers. And delete all the friends that you associated with that were, you used drugs or alcohol with. And that was a very tough day, but it was a very pivotal point in my recovery too. Do I miss it? No, but I think about it every day, 5 times a day.
Mike, talk about your life now. How is life for you right now?
Fantastic. Yeah, well, like I said, I think some people don't realize that once you do have an addiction, and whether or not that's alcohol or drugs or gambling or gaming or cigarettes or food, whatever it might be, if you have an addiction, if your behavior becomes an addiction, it never goes away. Like, for example, I haven't used in almost 4 years now, but 5 times a day I think about it. Watching commercials, even just going into the local supermarkets now, they offer non-alcoholic beers. Mm-hmm. I see the beers, I start to, subconsciously, I salivate about that, So, yeah, like just to point out that even though I might not have used in almost 4 years, that I'm still an addict. I don't necessarily go by that terminology, but the feelings are very strong. And I have coping mechanisms in place now that ensure that I don't relapse.
I would look at it, and I know the term addict seems to be a bit of a harsh term, right? Or an alcoholic. So I would tend to be a little more gentle and say there are no drug addicts or alcoholics. There are human beings who have trouble with drugs and alcohol.
True.
And you are a human being. Thank you very much for sharing this very personal story. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before we clue up today?
Yeah. Don't give up on anybody that's struggling with addictions. Like you said, we're all human, and addictions come in many forms, as I've just stated. Alcohol and drugs is just one of them. Technology, gambling is actually one of the worst that I've seen. But these are real people with real struggles, and in turn, when you have addiction issues, they oftentimes come encompassed with depression and anxiety and so on. So it kind of snowballs and compounds. So these people, need help.
You didn't set out. You didn't get up one morning and say, something, I think this is the day I'm going to become an addict.
Nope. Not at all. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You just, it's just you try something one time, and you try it a second time, and then it becomes a behavior, and then it gets to a point of too much. Then it becomes more of an addiction when it starts controlling you. So just avoid the labels, but just offer the help.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike, for taking the time out of your day. I know you've got many great years ahead of you with some kids, and thanks very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to tell your story.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate coming in.
That's it for this week, everybody. We'll be back next week with another interesting guest.